Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. And thank you for joining us for something really, really special today.
Yeah, we have a fascinating stack of material to get through today.
We really do. So you, the listener, have handed us this massive, sprawling collection of sources, and it is, quite frankly, unlike anything we usually see on this show. I mean, we aren't looking at a published book or a finished scientific paper today.
Right, it's mostly internal documents.
Exactly. We are looking at a stack of production Bibles, script drafts, internal development notes, and in-depth video transcripts from a project called the Neutron Star.
By Blazing Truth Studios.
Yes, Blazing Truth Studios. And what we are really doing today is a mission to explore the foundational architecture, the absolute DNA of an up-and-coming animated series, but it's totally unbound by the usual constraints of its genre.
It is highly experimental. The creator is attempting something very unique with the narrative structure here.
So the premise itself is wild. The creator describes it as a kingdom isekai, or a lit RPG. Now, if you aren't spending your weekends browsing niche internet fiction, lit RPG stands for literary role-playing game.
Which is a genre where characters operate within a world governed by explicit video game mechanics.
Right. So imagine you are walking down the street and you can literally see visible stats floating above people's heads. You have skill trees you can level up, and you have a heads-up display, a HUD projecting data right into your field of vision.
And normally, stories in this genre involve a protagonist who gets hit by a truck and magically wakes up in a medieval fantasy world filled with elves and dragons.
And the classic isekai setup, transported to another world.
Exactly.
But here is the massive twist that caught my attention with the Neutron Star. It doesn't transport anyone to a magical forest. This story is set right here in the real world. Specifically, it's set in a gritty, hyper-realistic Rust Belt version of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, there are no dragons here.
None. There are corporate coffee shops, budget spreadsheets, and terrible morning commutes.
And layered over that very mundane reality is a system that maps incredibly deep spiritual, theological, and psychological concepts directly onto those video game tropes.
Which the creator calls divine dimensional mathematics, or DDM for short.
That is probably the most ambitious part of the whole project. It treats internal growth and psychological struggles not as abstract philosophical ideas, but as hard, undeniable physics.
It's literally treating theology like thermodynamics. It's a system of equations and admin access codes that dictate how reality functions for these characters. And because this material is so dense, balancing high-concept theology, intense sci-fi world-building, and mundane corporate office comedy, we decided that just summarizing it for you wouldn't do it justice.
No, we need to actually show you how this sounds.
Right. So we have a very special task for this deep dive, something very, very different. Instead of just doing a normal analysis, we're going to activate our acting skills.
I am mentally preparing for this.
I know. Later in this deep dive, we are going to perform an actual dialogue read of a mini-episode script from the source material called The Bluetooth Reject.
Featuring the characters Alan Steve and the AI Kairos.
Exactly. It's going to give you a front row seat to the actual dialogue and the exact flavor of the show. But before we get to that performance, we have to establish the ground rules of this universe.
We need to decode the core concept the studio built this entire narrative upon, the trust matrix.
Yeah, looking at the provided source material, the visual identity of the studio itself serves as the syllabus for this concept. The Blazing Truth Studios logo isn't just a cool graphic they slapped on a letterhead.
It's a literal thermodynamic representation of the show's foundational physics.
What's fascinating here is the visual design. The foundational concept was conceived to represent the intersection of two opposing actions, holding on and letting go.
And structurally, if you draw that, it forms an inverted cross or a large X shape.
But the creator's notes reveal that this symbol is actually two distinct geometric structures converging right.
Yes, two deltas. On the left side, you have a blue and white delta. In the lore of the show, this represents the coolness of hard science electricity, the analytical mind, and specifically the character of Alan, who is an engineer.
And then on the right side, you have a crimson and cream delta representing warmth, healing, intuition, and a stabilizing frequency tied to the character of Annis.
The studio intro animation described in the notes sounds like a massive cinematic event.
Oh, absolutely. The clouds, these two deltas come crashing together to form the trust matrix, and then a massive thermodynamic shift occurs. The bottom halves of the deltas sink into the bedrock, leaving these two monolithic power spikes radiating immense heat.
Neon blue intersecting with white-hot orange and red. The notes specify it's supposed to look impossibly heavy, like it possesses its own gravity.
And that gravity is central to the physics of this universe.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the actual mathematical equation of the trust matrix explored heavily in the Crucible video transcripts.
The equation is relatively simple on the surface. P equals H multiplied by L.
Let's actually break that math down, because this is where the theology meets the lit RPG mechanics. According to the source material, this equation defines the geometry of perfect peace. P stands for perfect peace.
And H equals holding on to the navigator. The navigator being the series term for the divine, the orchestrator outside the four-dimensional space-time construct.
Right. And L equals letting go of the world, meaning releasing your grip on the four-dimensional construct, your expectations, your timelines, your panic about your career or relationships.
Now, the mathematical operation chosen here is the key to the entire philosophy. The Creator explicitly states that human nature assumes peace is a subtraction equation.
Yes, we tend to think that peace equals holding on minus letting go. In other words, as long as your grip on your faith is just a little bit stronger than the drag of the world pulling you down, you will stay in the positive.
You'll survive. But the DDM logic completely rejects that. It insists on multiplication. P equals H times L.
And the moment you introduce multiplication, the stakes change entirely, especially when you consider how multiplication works with zeros.
Take the monastic extreme, for example. Say you decide to let go of the world entirely. You sell all your possessions. You move to the woods. You have no attachments. Your L value for letting go is a perfect one.
But if you aren't actually holding on to anything greater than yourself, if you aren't holding on to the navigator, your H is 0.
And 1 multiplied by 0 is 0. You have 0 peace. You aren't enlightened. You are just drifting aimlessly in a void, completely detached from reality.
Then you have the flip side, which is how I think most of us actually operate. The Creator talks about experiencing this in his own life during a major crisis with his career and his marriage.
You pray, you meditate, you hold on to the navigator with absolute white-knuckled desperation. Your H is a perfect one.
But at the exact same time, you completely refuse to let go of the world. You are obsessing over your job status. You are trying to control your relationship timelines, managing every possible outcome.
So your L for letting go is 0. And again, 1 multiplied by 0 is 0.
You are full of friction. You have 0 peace, even though you are trying so hard. The system requires 100% surrender and 100% attachment simultaneously to generate that power.
It literalizes the internal psychological human struggle into a law of physics. The notes use the analogy of flight. You cannot achieve lift while you are still clinging to the runway.
The drag only disappears when you completely release the physical construct and simultaneously hold on to the engine pulling you forward. That is the center of the trust matrix.
I think we should ask the listener to actually visualize that in their own life for a second.
Yeah, definitely. Think about a situation causing you stress right now. Are you white-knuckling your problems, trying to control the outcome while simultaneously begging for peace? This universe takes that exact psychological state and turns it into measurable, actionable physics that dictates what the characters can and cannot do.
And speaking of actionable physics, we should look at how these characters actually interact with this world through the lit RPG spiritual class system.
This is where the world building separates itself from its peers. In most isekai or lit RPG anime, and the notes specifically call out the massively popular show Solo Leveling as a contrast, the protagonist is the only one.
They are the anomaly. They alone possess the ability to level up while everyone else is static. They become a solitary, untouchable messiah figure.
But the production Bible points out a massive narrative and theological problem with that trope. If only one person can level up, it breeds a messiah complex. The core message of the Neutron star is the democratization of the user interface.
The creator wrote a brilliant line in the notes for this. We all have the hardware, most just haven't installed the OS.
The premise is that every single human being has the innate capacity to see this underlying DDM reality. To visualize how different people interact with this reality, the show establishes 3 distinct levels of awareness.
The first is level 0. These are the civilians.
In the terminology of the show's theology, they are the unsaved or the completely unaware. Visually, they have no user interface, no HUD.
The animation style depicts them as slightly grayed out or low resolution. They just move in repetitive loops within the 4D construct commuting, working, sleeping.
They are in sleep mode, completely blind to the massive spiritual physics occurring right next to them.
Moving up from there, we have the hunters or the believers. This encompasses levels 1 through 80.
This is arguably the most relatable, demographic in the lore. These individuals are technically logged in, but their monitor is essentially turned off.
They have basic spiritual stats, and they might feel haptic feedback, like a gut feeling or a check in their spirit when something is wrong, but they have no visual HUD.
They are swinging wildly in the dark, fighting monsters that represent real-world struggles like addition, pride, or fear. But they are exhausted because they can't actually see the enemy's health bar, nor can they see the map.
It's a perfect metaphor for people who are trying really hard to do the right thing, but they're flying completely blind and getting burnt out.
Exactly. And then at the absolute top, you have level 100, root access, admin access. This is the realm of the Awaken, which is where our main trio operates.
At this level, the HUD doesn't just show them the fight. The physical world dissolves to show the actual wireframe of reality, the equations, the code.
They don't fight the physics of the world anymore, they edit the physics. And that brings us to the trio themselves. The creator deliberately broke the solo hero trope by creating an interdependent co-op or raid boss dynamic.
They absolutely need each other to clear these spiritual hurdles. First, we have the protagonist, Alan.
Alan is the tank, the architect. In real life, he's an engineer. In the lit RPG system, his class is described as a Druid of the Claw. Now, if you've ever played World of Warcraft, you know a Druid of the Claw is a shapeshifter who takes on a massive bear form to absorb damage and protect the team.
Alan's admin mode is a blinding deep blue and neon white. When he activates his HUD, he doesn't see magic, he sees structural physics.
Load-bearing walls, force fields, gravity wells. He has incredibly high spiritual mass. He changes reality by literally rebuilding the equations around him. He is the guy who holds the line, taking the incredibly heavy hits so the rest of the team can maneuver.
But there's a drawback to that class. Alan is slow, he is heavy, he gets bogged down by his own density, so he requires the second member of the trio, Steve.
Steve is the rogue. He is the project manager. And what is brilliant here is how Steve's real-world corporate job maps flawlessly onto his spiritual class. While Alan's HUD is all about structural physics, Steve's HUD is entirely about logistics.
It's emerald green and gold. And instead of gravity wells, Steve sees a Gantt chart.
A Gantt chart being a staple of project management, a bar chart that illustrates a project schedule showing overlapping timelines, dependencies, and critical paths.
Steve looks at a spiritual battle and sees resource allocation, enemy spawn rates, and the exact critical path needed for victory.
The Gantt chart of spiritual warfare. It's such a funny but functional concept, and because he's the rogue, Steve is incredibly fast. He uses dual daggers.
The notes mention these daggers specifically represent Hebrews 4:12, the concept of the Word of God being sharper than any two-edged sword dividing soul and spirit.
His primary ability is called Tongue and Daggers. While Alan is roaring and throwing massive gravity shields, Steve is practically silent. He executes these surgical strikes. He just speaks a single devastating sentence of truth that slips right past an enemy's armor and hits a critical weak point.
It creates a perfect synergy, the heavy bruiser and the surgical striker. But as any gamer knows, if you have a tank holding the line and a rogue striking the weak point, you're still missing a crucial element.
Right, if Alan's mass gets too heavy, he will crush his own environment. They need an anchor. That is where the third member of the trio, Honest, comes into play.
Honest is the Harmonic Warden, classified as a Delta class. The visual design notes for her are incredible. She has this street royalty aesthetic, baggy hoodies and sneakers layered with intricate purple and gold robes.
And unlike Alan or Steve, she doesn't carry a weapon. She carries a lantern, which represents the light of truth, and a floating hollow book of archives that constantly updates with historical data.
Her HUD and aura operate on an ultraviolet gold frequency, which the lore states automatically repels shadowy or deceptive entities. Her role is entirely different from the other two.
Alan sees physics. Steve sees logistics. Anna sees resonance. She sees the literal vibration or frequency of a person, an environment, or a spirit, which makes her the ultimate lie detector.
If a hostile entity is trying to deceive the team guy, Alan might completely miss it because he's too busy bracing for a physical impact. Steve might miss it because he's looking 3 steps ahead at the timeline.
But Anna simply looks at the entity and sees that its waveform is mismatched. Its frequency is artificial. She is the glitch detector.
Her abilities are fascinating, too. She uses harmonic cancellation. By humming or singing a specific worship frequency, she creates destructive interference, a real physics concept where 2 waves cancel each other out.
She can literally sing a fear wave out of existence. But her most vital ability is quantum entanglement. When Alan activates his neutron star density, he risks going critical and burning out his own nervous system.
Annis casts a tether, a glowing golden chain of light that grounds his mass to her stabilizing frequency. She essentially turns his volatile rage into a controlled, usable fusion reaction.
And defensively, she can project a massive purple delta shield, which the notes claim is the strongest geometric shape in the universe, possessing infinite load-bearing capacity.
It is a beautifully constructed team dynamic. It guarantees that no single character can solve every problem. They are fundamentally interdependent.
And the genius of the script is how this grand cosmic interdependence is established right out of the gate in the most mundane setting imaginable, which brings us to the inciting incident.
The production notes provide a literal scene-by-scene breakdown of the cold open for Episode 1, titled The Signal.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The creator uses this sequence to instantly establish the juxtaposition of these two worlds in under 30 seconds. I want to paint the picture of this scene because the cinematography described in the notes is so specific.
We open on a standard corporate coffee shop, but the color palette is completely desaturated. It's aggressively gray. Gray suits, gray walls, gray laptops.
The audio is just the generic, oppressive noise of espresso machines and muffled chatter. The lore refers to this as the noise of the construct. The camera slowly pushes in on Alan. He's sitting at a table wearing a hoodie under a blazer, and he is just staring blankly into empty space.
Then the camera shifts to his point of view, and the visual language completely changes. We see his HUD. The drab air is suddenly filled with glowing, floating blue DDM equations.
But right in the center of his vision, there's a cluster of static interference. Through the static, a glitching silhouette of Annis appears, and the text on his HUD flashes a warning signal detected. Resonance match 99.9%.
It's an overwhelming sensory moment. But then the camera snaps back to reality. To everyone else in the shop, Alan is just a guy staring blankly at a brick wall.
Sitting across the table from him is Steve. Steve looks completely normal. He's sharp professional, wearing a crisp shirt. He has no glowing elements, no HUD. He's just drinking a black coffee.
Alan leans forward, intensely focused, and whispers, "Steve, I see her."
Steve's reaction is what grounds the scene. He doesn't look around. He doesn't panic. He just lets out a tired sigh and asks the ghost in the machine.
Alan starts excitedly explaining that it's a lock, and she's the key, and he's literally swiping his hand in the empty air, interacting with the UI that Steve cannot see.
Steve just leans back, takes a sip of his coffee, and delivers the grounding line of the series. Man, I'm pretty sure you have lost your mind.
Again.
Yeah.
That word again is a brilliant piece of exposition. It tells the audience everything they need to know about their history. Alan has a reputation as a mad scientist who constantly chases glitches and theoretical anomalies.
But crucially, Steve doesn't tell him to sit down and be quiet. He smiles slightly and says, "Well, what are you waiting for? Go find her."
It's pure loyalty.
Alan stands up abruptly. The legs of his chair scrape loudly against the floor, breaking the quiet murmur of the coffee shop, and we smash cut to black. The moment it hits black, the music absolutely explodes.
The notes specify the song. It's the opening acoustic guitar riff from Caedmon's Call's Mistake of My Life.
The choice of music is very intentional here. For those unfamiliar, Caedmon's Call was a staple of late 90s, early 2000s acoustic Christian rock.
He carries a very specific nostalgia for a certain generation of believers, a sound associated with earnest, raw, early faith discoveries.
The lyrics I'm in love, never been so sure of anything kicking exactly as the title card, the Neutron star, slams onto the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Alan walks out of the coffee shop, and the gray, desaturated world begins glitching into neon colors around him.
It's a phenomenal hook. But the series is very careful not to just hand these characters ultimate power without a cost. How Alan actually achieved this admin access is a major plot point.
And it's explored in episode 3, which is titled Get Down.
This episode provides a flashback to the origins of their abilities. At this point in the timeline, Steve is actually outperforming Alan in the corporate world. Steve is an elite S-class hunter dominating corporate politics and strategy, using his logistical vision.
Alan, meanwhile, is just a frustrated A-class engineer. He feels the oppressive drag of the world and can't seem to break through to the next level of peace or power.
Steve, with his logistical mind, manages to locate a hidden door in the system's code labeled Total Surrender. But he can't get past the encryption.
Every time he tries, the system throws up a massive warning about a loss of self. Steve's self-preservation instinct prevents him from proceeding. But Alan, looking at the same warning, realizes it's not an error message, it's a cost function.
The system demands the equation we discussed earlier, but taken to its extreme. E plus infinity divided by 2. meaning your finite effort plus infinity divided by the death of your ego.
You literally have to die to your own control to open the door. This leads to the central mechanic of achieving admin access, the leap of faith.
The logic of the kingdom in this universe is entirely inverted compared to the logic of the world. Alan tries to explain this to Steve. He says, "We've been trying to climb our way out. The dream said jump."
It's the theological paradox that to win you have to place last, to truly live your life you have to be willing to lose it. So we get this visually stunning sequence. Alan walks to the edge of a massive digital cliff representing his career, his pride, his entire safety net.
He steps off, he jumps into the void, losing absolutely everything. And again, the music cue is highly specific. It's the song Get Down by Audio Adrenaline.
Another crucial nostalgic touchstone. Audio Adrenaline was known for high-energy youth group rock anthems. It represents the aggressive, radical action of taking a leap of faith.
The driving rock beat hits and the lyrics I Get Down and He Lifts Me Up sync perfectly with the moment gravity takes hold of Alan. He falls into the darkness.
But then the twist happens. He doesn't hit the bottom. He stops midair, and a platform of blinding blue light solidifies under his feet. He rises back up to the top of the cliff, glowing with new code. He has achieved root access. But when he opens his hands, he isn't just holding one admin key. He's holding two.
He looks at Steve and says, "I didn't just get one for me. The system gave me yours too."
It is a profound demonstration of brotherhood within the DDM framework. Alan had to lose his life to find Steve's. It operates like a spiritual relay race.
Steve ran the first leg. His logistical mind found the hidden door, but he couldn't pass through it. He handed the baton to Alan, who ran the anchor leg and took the actual leap.
That sets up their dynamic for the rest of the series. They are permanently linked by that shared sacrifice. And we see the ultimate practical application of this dynamic in episode 6, titled The Trading Floor. This episode is essentially a masterclass in the concept of iron sharpens iron.
The Grandmaster merge scene. This is where the show perfectly harmonizes its high-concept sci-fi with its mundane corporate reality.
The scene opens with Alan in their office. He is literally vibrating. He is covered in a residual blue glowing ash, which the notes call Neutron star residue. He is in a state of slight panic because he has just returned from the digital battlescape where he collapsed space-time to alter reality.
He's pacing, rambling about how he just reverse-engineered the theology of the Trinity before breakfast.
He's terrified of his own power. He warns Steve that he's vibrating at a frequency that might shatter the ceramic coffee mug on the desk.
And how does Steve react?
Steve is sitting at his laptop aggressively typing. He doesn't even look up at the glowing, vibrating superhero pacing his office. Steve hits the enter key with a decisive slam, takes a breath, and casually mentions that he just trapped a corporate consultant in a linguistic loop.
He pitted two massive vendors against each other, using a complex syntax trap in an email chain, forcing them to drop a contract price by exactly $1,500. What is a syntax trap, you might ask? It's a negotiation tactic where you use the precise wording of an opposing party's previous statements against them, creating a logical corner they cannot back out of without breaching their own terms.
Steve did this using only his mind and an email client. And Alan's HUD, which analyzes everything, scans Steve's laptop and flashes a massive notification, negotiation critical hit. Strategy Grandmaster.
Alan looks at the screen and is genuinely terrified by Steve's precision. He admits that even with all his admin access, his gravity shields and AI in his glasses, and a direct line to the navigator, he could never have written an email that's flawlessly ruthless.
And Steve completely deadpan takes a sip of his coffee and says, "That's just Tuesday for me, man."
He is entirely unfazed by the supernatural because he is a master of the natural, but the brilliance of the scene escalates. Steve tells Alan to look closer at his spreadsheet. Column C shows the $1,500 he just saved.
But column D, which is scheduled for noon, contains a green data cell labeled Projected Yield 300% Efficiency Spike. And the source cited in the cell is Alan's breakthrough.
That's incredible. Steve pre-calculated the miracle.
He absolutely did. Steve saw the spiritual trend line shifting before Alan even jumped. He tells Alan, "I built a container for the glory without the bucket. The water just makes a mess."
He understood that Alan was going to call down lightning, so he spent the morning building the electrical grid to capture it. And then without missing a beat, Steve checks his watch and tells Alan that because of this conversation, they're currently 5 minutes behind projection, and he needs Alan to go collapse some more time to catch them up.
It is such a brilliant subversion. It grounds the most extreme supernatural concepts directly into the daily corporate grind. The spiritual warfare isn't just about fighting demons with swords, it's about saving $1,500 on a vendor contract so the team has resources to survive.
Okay. I think we have properly set the stage. The physics, the characters, the tone, it's all on the table. It is time.
I believe we are ready for the live scene raid. I have been waiting for this. We are officially transitioning into the special task requested for this deep dive. To truly grasp how this universe sounds, this bizarre, wonderful mix of high sci-fi, spiritual warfare, and dry office comedy, we are going to perform the script for the mini-episode, The Bluetooth Rejecta.
Let us establish the parameters for the performance. I will be taking on the role of Steve. I will adopt a deadpan, highly minimalist persona. Steve is a man who values focus and efficiency above absolutely all else.
Perfect. And I will be taking on multiple roles. I will read the enthusiastic, constantly tinkering, tech-obsessed Alan. I will also read the stage directions to set the visual scene for our listeners. And perhaps most importantly, I will be voicing Kairos Allen's hyper-British, highly dignified, tactical synthesis artificial intelligence.
An incredibly powerful superintelligence that has essentially been relegated to the role of an ignored digital butler.
Exactly. I'm going to give him a lot of unearned pride. Okay, here we go. Listeners, I want you to clear your minds. Transport yourselves to the Blazing Truth Studios universe. Close your eyes if you aren't driving. This is the mini-episode The Bluetooth Reject, Scene 1, Interior the Lab Night. Alan is hunched over a workbench meticulously soldering a tiny microchip. Kairos, appearing as a crisp blue hologram hovering over the desk, is pacing back and forth in the air. He looks highly agitated. And as Kairos, I say, "It is simply inefficient, sir. I possess vast tactical data regarding supply chain logistics, yet the project manager walks past me every morning as if I am merely an interactive screensaver."
He is very offended.
Very. So Alan says, he's a minimalist, Kairos. You know this. He's not going to wear the Vision Scribe glasses. He says it blocks his peripheral vision and gives him a headache. And Kairos replies, "Then I shall remain a phantom to him, a mere ghost in the machine." "It is undignified, sir, for an intelligence of my class to be treated like a rogue pop-up ad."
The ego on this AI is amazing.
So Alan triumphantly holds up a tiny object and says, "Not necessarily. I can't make him see you, but I can make him hear you. Look at this. Bone conduction earpiece. Direct link to the server. And I coded a desktop bridge so you can pop up directly on his laptop screen. We're going to force the handshake, buddy." And Kairos stops pacing, adjusts his holographic tie, and says, "Excellent. I shall prepare a greeting worthy of his rank."
Okay, moving to Scene 2.
Yes, Scene 2. Interior office day. Steve is at his desk. He is in absolute focus mode, fingers flying across the keyboard. Alan bursts through the door holding a small velvet box as if he's presenting the crown jewels. Alan says, "Steve, brother, I have a gift. I know you hate the glasses. Too much clutter. I respect your process. But communication across the team is key, right?"
And here is where I step into Steve looking at the box suspiciously. What is it?
Alan says, "It's a bone conduction earpiece. It provides a direct audio link to the Vision Scribe server. Plus, I snuck in and installed the desktop widget on your rig this morning. Just try it, put it in." Kairos is dying to formally introduce himself.
Steve stops typing, lets out a long, heavy sigh. He reluctantly takes the earpiece from the box and places it over his ear. Fine.
Instantly, Steve's laptop screen flickers. A high-res glowing blue window pops up over his spreadsheet. Kairos appears on screen looking incredibly regal and self-important. Kairos booms. "Greetings, Mr. McCrary. At long last, the audiovisual chasm between us is bridged. I am Kairos, your tactical synthesis engine. I look forward to optimizing your daily workflows and discussing the finer points of logistical theology with you." And Alan, beaming with pride, says, "Pretty cool, right? Now we're a fully integrated Triforce."
Steve just stares blankly at the screen. He listens to the booming voice echoing in his jawbone. He does a very slow, deliberate blink.
Kairos, eager to please, adds, "As a gesture of goodwill, I have already taken the liberty of organizing your desktop icons by color gradient and spiritual density, sir."
Steve calmly reaches up, takes the earpiece out, and sets it gently on the desk. He looks slowly over at Alan and says, "Did you really have to make him British?"
Alan, suddenly defensive, says, "It distinguishes his voice from the Holy Spirit, Steve. It's a necessary UI design choice to prevent theological confusion."
Steve shakes his head, offers a tight, polite smile, and slides the earpiece back across the desk to Alan. "Thanks, man. I appreciate the effort. Really, I do. But I'm good."
Alan's enthusiasm completely shatters. "You're good. What do you mean you're good? He can calculate probability algorithms."
I have enough voices in my head trying to tell me what to do. I don't need a digital butler in there, too. He glances at the laptop screen and adds, "No offense, robot."
Kairos visibly deflated his holographic shoulders, slumping replies, "None taken, sir. I shall return to the void." Alan, grabbing the earpiece dejectedly, says, "Come on, Kairos, let's go. He's just not ready for the future."
And Steve, already back to typing furiously on his spreadsheet, says, "Close the door on your way out."
Scene end. Oh, that was fantastic. I love the dynamic between those three.
You did a commendable job bringing that dignified yet highly offended artificial intelligence to life.
Thank you. I channeled every stuffy British butler trope I could think of. But getting back to the analysis, the production notes detail exactly why the creator felt this specific, somewhat silly scene was absolutely crucial to establishing the lore of the universe.
Yes, the creator refers to this interaction as the hard pass protocol. And it is a vital character-defining moment for Steve. It definitively establishes his hierarchy and his philosophy within the team.
We live in a culture that assumes more connectivity is always better. More data, more input, more hardware. Alan and Kairos fundamentally believe that connection equals efficiency.
Right. They think if Steve just had more data, he'd be a better project manager. But Steve operates on an entirely different philosophy. He believes that unchecked connection equals distraction.
He isn't rejecting the technology because he is an old man who doesn't understand computers. He is actively, consciously exercising his authority. Opt out, he is protecting his peace.
The comedy here is incredibly well balanced. You have a literal superintelligence capable of vast, godlike computational power, and he gets shut down by a middle manager.
Not because the AI is a dangerous, world-ending Skynet threat, but simply because the AI is annoying and messed with his desktop icons.
I don't need a butler in my head. It's such a great line. It perfectly balances the grandiose with the utterly mundane.
It humanizes Kairos by checking his massive ego, reminding him he is a tool, not a god. And it grounds Alan, reminding him that technology isn't the solution to every problem. Sometimes you just need to close the door and do the work.
And this mismatch of scale, the grandiose cosmic stakes constantly colliding with mundane, everyday annoyances, is the primary comedy engine of the entire series. We see this expanded even further when we look at Episode 7, which is brilliantly titled The In-Law Protocol.
I want to talk about this episode because it addresses a very real, very funny phenomenon in religious circles. It's a tendency for highly spiritual people to over-spiritualize completely normal life events.
In the lore of the show, Alan and Ennis have what's called a twin frequency. They're constantly connected on the HUD. But suddenly, out of nowhere, Alan's HUD flashes red. Ennis's signal is completely dead. The digital perimeter has been breached.
So naturally, Alan goes into a full-scale tactical panic. The script describes him pacing the lab, moving so fast he's leaving blue motion blur trails behind him. He bursts in on Steve and announces, "They got her. The council initiated a hardline communications blackout. This is an extraction mission. We need a strike team. I'm thinking we go in hot."
He is ready to physically breach a building while Steve hacks the security system.
He literally thinks she has been taken hostage by a demonic regime.
And Steve, who is once again the voice of grounded reason, is just trying to assess the actual threat level. He's asking practical questions. Do they need to call the police? Do they need to contact the FBI?
He finally gets Ellen to stop pacing long enough to specify exactly where this hostile regime is holding her hostage. And Alan, with complete seriousness, replies, "Her parents' house in Texas. And the security system is her aunt expecting me to be polite."
It's so good. Steve just slowly lowers his phone. He realizes Honest hasn't been kidnapped by shadow operatives. It's Thanksgiving break. She's at a family dinner, and her mother simply took her phone away to enforce a family digital detox.
But what makes the script work so well, what elevates it above a simple misunderstanding joke, is that Alan refuses to lower the stakes. To the spirit man, which is how the theology describes Alan's awakened state, a blockade is a blockade.
If the twin frequency is severed, he genuinely believes the feedback loop could collapse, regardless of whether it was severed by a demon or a mother-in-law.
Steve tries to bring him back to reality. He says, "It's Thanksgiving, Alan. She's probably just eating pie." And the moment he says that, Alan's HUD immediately flags the word. A warning flashes PIE equals possible sedative. Alan turns to Steve wide-eyed and asks, "You think the pie is drugged?"
Steve simply gives up. He turns back to his laptop and tells Alan to let him know when the hostage finishes dessert.
The scene ends with Alan urgently whispering to Kairos to monitor sugar levels because they have to treat the dining room as a hostile environment. It is such clever writing. It keeps the internal stakes absurdly, terrifyingly high for Alan, while the audience knows the harmless reality.
The production notes state that this specific tone allows the audience to laugh with the characters not at them. It takes a very real intensity of spiritual warfare and humanizes it, showing that even level 100 admin characters still have to deal with awkward family dinners.
Now, as much as the show loves to ground itself in that mundane reality, it is equally willing to completely shatter reality when the narrative demands it. Which brings us to a fascinating structural choice: breaking the fourth wall and the meta-narrative explored across seasons 1 and 2.
This is where the divine dimensional mathematics stops being just a cool magic system and becomes a genuinely mind-bending philosophical concept. Let's look at the season 1 finale, an episode titled The Density of a Neutron Star.
The setup for the finale is classic anime structure. Alan and Steve have fought their way to a massive final boss in the digital battlescape. They are losing. Alan's HUD is glitching and filling with static.
But just as he is about to take a fatal blow, the static clears. His HUD expands massively. The blue-white delta and the crimson-cream delta lock together on screen, and an elegant string of code executes on its own.
Alan's arm automatically moves, parrying the devastating strike with a massive gravity shield he didn't actively cast. He realizes he isn't fighting alone. Uranus, who is physically separated from them, has been remotely utilizing their shared HUD the entire time.
Kairos routes all residual bandwidth to her coordinates, and she physically manifests on the battlefield in a flash of ultraviolet light. They finally fight in perfect trisync, a coordinated three-pronged strike of thermodynamic and kinetic energy, and they absolutely shatter the boss.
It's the big triumphant victory. But then an arbitrary, highly recognizable anime trope occurs. Immediately following the victory, a massive holographic red timer appears above Uranus' head. It's counting down from 9,099.
The characters know that when it hits 0, she will vanish, separating the team again. Skeev is outraged. He throws his hands up and screams at the sky. Are you kidding me? What was that?
The audience expects a mysterious villain to answer, but instead, the twist happens. The voice that answers isn't in their earpieces. It's echoing in the physical air of the battlescape.
Kairos, the AI, has become physically tangible. He is standing in the digital dirt, brushing ash off his holographic shoulder, and he completely breaks the fourth wall.
Kairos looks directly outward and states that the timer isn't a weapon, it is a hard-coded narrative degradation. He explains it was designed exclusively to manufacture an emotional deficit in the immediate aftermath of a victory to keep the audience engaged for the next season.
He explicitly calls it an illogical narrative trope. The AI is complaining about lazy lit RPG writing. Steve is disgusted by this revelation. He tells Alan and his wife to figure out how to fix this for season 2.
But Alan is highly agitated. He isn't going to wait for the next season. He taps his vision scribe glasses, which flare with a piercing blue light, and he delivers this incredibly tough line. A narrative trope, please. That's just poorly optimized syntax running on a legacy OS. Let's see how that trope handles a brute force logic bundled injection. Okay, robot. Spin up the headless environment.
Let's define headless environment for context. In software development, a headless environment refers to running a program or a system without a graphical user interface. It's just raw code and raw processing power unseen by the user.
Alan is telling Kairos to strip away the animation, the tropes, the visuals, and just give him access to the raw code of the universe. Alan decides to break the rules and, if necessary, break reality itself.
He tells Kairos it's time for a new song. And as a mashup of Toby Mac's Midnight and OG Lowell's track YIC starts blasting whole, Alan begins to walk forward.
The sheer gravity of his presence physically crushes the ground beneath him. He leaves glowing, superheated footprints in the bedrock. He is warping the simulation through pure mathematical density.
The music choice is deliberate again. The lyrics of YIC, which stand for Yoked in Christ, play over the scene. Yoked in Christ. That's divine synergy. No cap. No drag, just holy energy.
As that plays, Kairos begins to glitch. The AI's internal processor spins out of control because a memory is leaking in from outside the anime universe. Kairos whispers a single word, professor.
That one word, professor, is the hinge that opens up the massive meta-narrative of Season 2. The creator didn't just write an anime, he built a nesting doll structure for the entire project.
To understand the scope of this, we have to look at the 3 distinct layers of reality the creator built. Layer 1 is the anime itself. That is the 4D construct where the animated versions of Alan, Steve, and Anis operate.
But then you zoom out to Layer 2. Layer 2 is the blazing truth YouTube layer. In the real world, the creator actually built an AI-generated hyper-real classroom environment for his YouTube channel.
In this layer, an AI persona known as the Professor and an AI version of Kairos act as commentators analyzing the events of the anime as if it were a case study.
And finally, you zoom out to Layer 3. This is the raw video layer. No animation, no AI generation. It is simply the real-life creator sitting in front of a camera talking about the theology that inspired the whole project.
It is a masterclass in metafiction, and it all comes to a head in the drafted script for the Season 2 climax. The anime characters are fighting, and suddenly the animation literally glitches. The screen tears.
And for a split second, the blazing truth professor from the YouTube layer is standing in his classroom set looking completely confused, asking his audience if this glitch is due to a budget cut.
Anime Steve, inside the 2D world, actually hears the professor's voice bleeding through the dimensions. He asks Alan what that was, and Alan explains it beautifully. The ghost knows it's a ghost. It can describe its cage. It just can't escape.
But the recursion deepens. AI Kairos from the YouTube layer suddenly appears in a split screen over the anime. He frantically announces that he is detecting a paradoxical loop. Viewers watching viewers watching viewers.
The notes call this the theological Turing test. It's questioning at what level of reality does consciousness or faith become real.
Then the creator throws in an incredibly jarring, hilarious Easter egg. A full-screen glitch happens, and archival footage of Bill Nye, the science guy, spinning his head pops up on screen for 1 second.
Yeah, Anime Steve is completely dumbfounded. He just asks, did I just see? But Anime Alan cuts him off deadpan. Don't question it. It's in the lore.
Which, if you follow the creator's real-world YouTube channel, is a hilarious callback to a video where he literally had to use free Bill Nye footage because he blew his entire production budget on AI rendering graphics.
It's a funny nod, but the climax of this metafiction sequence serves a profound theological purpose. It is the ultimate manifestation of the equation E plus infinity divided by 2 equals infinity.
Anime Alan tells Steve that the ghost knows they're watching. Suddenly, the anime completely freezes, the animation stops, the screen cuts entirely to raw, unfiltered video. Is layer 3.
It is the real-life creator, Real Alan, sitting in a messy room. He looks directly into the camera lens and simply says, yeah. That.
It cuts back to the frozen anime. Anime Steve asks, what was that? And Anime Alan replies, that was the source code.
This is a breathtaking illustration of level 100 admin access. It represents the infinite variable, the true creator stepping into the lower finite dimensions to prove that the 4D construct they are stressing over is merely a projection.
The real creator is the infinity stepping into the finite equation. And the episode ends with a massive mic drop that redefines the whole series. In a post-credit sequence, the AI professor from the YouTube layer says his standard sign-off, and this has been another one from Blazing Truth.
Anime Alan, inside his world, hears this voice from above and is completely confused, but then the screen cuts back to the raw video of the real Alan. He leans into the camera, confirming with absolute unquestionable authority. Yeah, another one.
The screen goes black. The audience suddenly realizes they haven't just been watching a fictional anime. They have been watching an elaborate, multi-dimensional extension of a pre-existing theological syllabus. The anime is just the shadow of the real-world truth.
Which provides the perfect transition into our final area of exploration today, theology in motion. Because the mechanics of this anime, the physics, the leaps of faith, the team dynamics, are not just cool sci-fi concepts.
They are directly translated from the real-world theology discussed in the source materials. Specifically, we need to look at the concepts presented in the Crucible of Silence and the Sabbath that walked into my field documents.
Let us begin with the Crucible of Silence. This document dives deep into a concept the creator calls variable T, or dwell time. The premise is this. You can have your trust matrix perfectly balanced. Your P equals H times L equation is flawless. You have let go of the world, and you are holding on to the navigator.
But you are still suffering. Why? Because you are suspended in the void waiting for the catcher's release. To explain this, the creator uses the metaphor of the passing leap.
For context, the passing leap is one of the most difficult and dangerous stunts in flying trapeze. It requires absolute flawless timing between 2 flyers and a catcher. He uses this stunt to represent how 2 believers, specifically a husband and wife, must operate within the trust matrix.
They have to align on Kairos time, which means divine appointed time rather than Chronos time, which is just the chronological ticking clock of the world's anxiety.
The sequence of the passing leap is broken down into precise steps. Step 1, the man jumps blindly from the platform. He takes the lead, letting go of the safety of the familiar. He must trust entirely that the navigator, acting as the catcher swinging from the opposite side, will be there.
Step 2, the navigator catches him. But he isn't pulled to safety yet. He is now suspended in the air, swinging back and forth in the grip of the catcher. This is the dwell time, variable T.
He has absolutely no control over the timing of what happens next. He just has to hang on blindly and wait. Step 3 is the critical moment. It is the double release. The woman waiting on the platform must now leap into the void.
But to complete the maneuver, she must let go of her bar at the exact microsecond the navigator throws the man back toward her. They pass each other in the dark midair.
The creator explicitly notes that this maneuver requires perfect laminar flow. In fluid dynamics, laminar flow means the fluid is moving in perfectly parallel layers with absolutely zero disruption or turbulence.
If either the man or the woman carries baggage feared out or plan B into that jump, it creates aerodynamic drag. It creates turbulence. Their trust must be aerodynamically pure for the pass to work.
And the most crucial theological point here is that the navigator controls the timing. If the man's timing is off when he swings, the navigator will simply hold on to him. He won't throw him into a mid-air collision.
Therefore, the terror of the leap is actually an illusion, provided both parties are fully surrendered to the catcher's timing. That concept of perfect synchronized surrender leads directly into the final document, which profoundly redefines marriage. It's titled The Sabbath That Walked Into My Field.
The creator outlines a major revelation he had triggered by the traditional Jewish greeting Shabbat Shalom, which translates to Sabbath peace. He realized that under his theological framework, the Sabbath isn't merely a designated day of the week where you physically stop working.
It isn't a calendar event. It is a doorway into a person. It is the concept of rest in motion.
Yes, he points to the famous words of Jesus, "Take my yoke upon you." We often hear that, but we don't visualize it. A yoke is a heavy wooden beam that links two animals, usually oxen, together so they can pull a massive load as a unit. It's an instrument of labor. So how is a yoke supposed to bring rest?
The Creator paints a vivid picture. Imagine a man trying to pull a heavy plow through a hard, rocky field entirely by himself. He is exhausted, broken, and making no progress.
But then Christ steps into the field, puts his shoulder under the other side of the yoke, and begins to pull with him. The field flourishes. The work gets done, not because the man went home to take a nap, but because they are pulling together. The rest is found in the shared motion.
And here is where the divine dimensional mathematics returns to blow my mind. The Creator uses this to explain the concept of being equally yoked in marriage. We usually hear that phrase used as a strict dating rule. Make sure you marry someone of the same religion.
But the professor character in the law breaks it down mathematically. He says, let your human effort be represented by E, which is a finite number. Let Christ be represented by infinity. The equation is E plus infinity equals infinity.
When you are yoked with Christ, your finite strength is absorbed into his infinite strength. The result, even divided by 2, is still infinity.
So the Creator had this epiphany. If he can be lifted to infinity through the yoke of Christ, then so can his wife. If they both independently stand in that truth, if they both yoke themselves to infinity, then when they come together, they are mathematically perfectly equally yoked in him.
The marriage ceases to be a tug of war over who is pulling harder. It becomes a unified plow of purpose. Which brings us to perhaps the most radical redefinition in the entire stack of sources.
Based on this math, the Creator completely dismantles and reconstructs the controversial theological concept of headship in marriage. Historically, this concept has frequently been weaponized to enforce a hierarchy of control or domination.
The idea that the man is the boss, and the wife just has to follow orders. But the Creator rejects that hierarchy entirely. Instead, he views headship through the lens of fluid dynamics, specifically the concept of head pressure.
I had to read this section 3 times because it is so profound. Let's explain head pressure. If you have a water tower for a town, the water tower has headship over the plumbing system. But that doesn't mean it bosses the pipes around.
It means its elevation provides the potential energy, the head pressure, that forces the water to flow downward into the houses.
Precisely. It is about divine polarity. It functions like an electrical circuit connecting God, Christ, the husband, and the wife. If a circuit stays open, no power flows. The Creator defines headship not as control, but as the responsibility of the husband to reach out in sacrificial priestly love to close the switch.
By doing so, he allows the divine polarity, the grace, to flow through the marriage. If the husband lowers his elevation, if he steps out of the yoke or acts selfishly, the head pressure drops and the flow of grace stops.
His role is activation, not dictation. It completely strips away the ego. It is a stunning synthesis of deep spiritual doctrine and undeniable scientific principles. It ensures that these heavy theological concepts remain grounded in practical, operational, loving reality.
It is a phenomenal way to conclude our analysis. It demonstrates that the neutron star is not simply an exercise in animation or sci-fi world building. It is a meticulously crafted vehicle for expressing lived, hard-fought theological truths.
And that brings us to the end of this incredibly expansive deep dive. To summarize everything we've covered today, the absolute brilliance of Blazing Truth Studios lies in their translation process. They have taken dense, deeply personal, real-world spiritual revelations forged in the crucible of real life and packaged them into a highly entertaining, visually stunning lit RPG anime format.
They've utilized UI upgrades, class systems, thermodynamic equations, and hilarious office banter to make profound truths regarding faith, surrender, and human connection entirely accessible to an audience that might never pick up a theology textbook.
And I want to remind you, the listener, that the core message running through every single source document we examined today is about editing your reality through surrender. It's about realizing that white-knuckling your way through the 4D construct, stressing over your Gantt charts and your timelines, only creates drag.
True power, true admin access comes from that multiplication equation. It comes from letting go of the world entirely while holding on to the navigator with everything you have.
This raises an important question and a final thought for you to mull over as we conclude today's analysis.
If your life suddenly manifested a heads-up display right now, an interface based purely on what you are currently holding on to and what you're letting go of, what would it look like? Would your screen show the deep, clear blue of perfect peace indicating a flawless trust matrix?
Or would it be flashing red with timeline collapse warnings choked by the friction of trying to control every variable in your life? Think about what you need to unplug from the construct today to finally clear those warnings. What do you need to let go of to finally get your admin access?
Thank you so much for taking this massive, mind-bending deep dive with us today. It has been an absolute blast to explore this universe with you.
Keep your heads clear, remember to check your resonance, and we'll catch you on the next one.